It is ever the tendency of survivors of narcissistic abuse, of people who've been in narcissistic abusive relationships, to go into denial about the reality that they're facing with a narcissistically abusive type of person. This is very, very common. It's you could even say it's practically one of the symptoms that shows that this person really has experienced narcissistic abuse, because they're mirroring the reality denial of the narcissist themselves. And so then a person who's a target will continue to try to make things work with a narcissist while stoically and stubbornly and stiffly refusing to see things as they are. I include myself in this description, of course, in my own narcissistically abusive relationships. And I think one of the things that's very, very hard to see, but is very, very important to be able to see, is that the narcissist simply doesn't see the world in the way that you see the world. Their priorities are not your priorities. And I think if you keep expecting for something different, that's what leaves you open to more abuse. If you keep expecting them to have the same core coordinates that you do, or the same core coordinates that other people do, then that's what keeps the hope going. It's what keeps the abuse going. So there are three elements to a narcissist's worldview that I think are very, very important for non-narcissistic people to attempt to understand. The first one is the third person perspective. It's almost like a quantum physics issue. They're always living inside of the observer position. They're in superposition. They're never in their lives. They're observing their lives. They're observing themselves, and they're observing their interactions. And this is a key element to understand some of the strange behavior that you would have seen, some of the weirdly cruel behavior that you've experienced and you've suffered at the hands of, and some of the apparently self-destructive things that they also do, because you think, oh, if this was just a very self-centered and selfish person who wanted to get as much as they wanted from people, why do this? Why do that? Why say that? And it can be explained by understanding that they're not really living their lives as themselves. They think of how everything looks to other people. So when they're with you, they have to run another simulation, another thought track that is constantly asking, how do I look in the eyes of the person I'm in front of? What is she thinking about me? What is he thinking about me as I'm talking? What feedback have I got from them that I'm pulling off this con, that I'm convincing them that my narrative is the true narrative? So everything is done from a third person. Their memories are built in third person. Their fantasies are built in the third person. Their experience of daily life is done in the third person. Ever notice that they can be quite clumsy, that they could be quite forgetful? There was one particular, I think I've only ever really been in two relationships with somebody that I'd say would fit NPD. Not both of them, but one of them was so clumsy that in a 3.5 year relationship, every 5 to 6 months, she would actually injure herself because of the intensity of this third person state that she was operating from. The other one would just be wildly irresponsible. She'd just be losing keys, losing money, losing phones, losing items all the time. And this all comes down to this first principle, which is the third person perspective. The second perspective that the narcissist is operating from, that I want you all to understand and keep in mind at all times, is a perspective of power. They're looking at the world in terms of power. Now, if it's the classic grandiose narcissist, then it means power as we would usually understand it as English speakers. If they're fragile, vulnerable, or covert narcissists, then the power is usually tinged, or needs to be tinged, with the power to coerce people, not just to do what they say, but to take care of them. So the power of being the biggest victim in the room, the power of evoking as much pity and sympathy in other people as you possibly can. This is essential. So the first is they're viewing their life from an observer point, a third person perspective. They view you and them from that point. They were never present for your relationship. They're not capable of it. They're not interested in it. It doesn't mean anything then to them to do that. They're only interested in convincing you as a member, as a living member of the fantasy audience they perpetually have in their minds. You're a special audience member for a time. You're a privileged audience member. You're VIP. You're backstage, but you're still just an audience member. The second element is to think of everything in terms of power. The narcissist is viewing the world through a power paradigm. Who has the power? Who has the pull in any given situation? That's what they're looking at. That's how they scan social environments. That's how they map the people that they read, is for power. And the third perspective to understand narcissistic behavior in the narcissist world is that of roles and role play. What role are they playing? This is a child trapped in an adult's body. This is an infantile response to the world. This is an infantile defense against a cruel reality and the demands and the responsibilities of adult life. This is a little child playing dress up. They put on mummy's clothes, they put on daddy's clothes. They're too big, they don't fit, because that's not really an adult. It's not really who they are. So they play the role, they put the mask on, but the mask is too big. They put the outfit on, but the outfit is too big. And because it's too big, they rattle around inside that role. And a lot of times they're really not sure which levers to pull and what buttons to push. But what they're good at is keeping an eye on your reaction to them, the audience member's reaction to them, the audience member being every single person in their reality. And am I convincing them? Am I convincing them? Am I convincing them? Am I pulling this off? Am I pulling this off? Am I pulling this off? So at any moment, you've got a person who is observing their life. They're only interested in any aspect of their life and any of the people in their life in terms of power and what they can use them for and what they can be exploited for. And the third thing is you need to figure out what role is this person playing. The narcissist is in role play. I'm a humble, kind lover of animals who works in charity. I'm a harmless, gentle intellectual whose only interest is in arcane literature, or so on and so forth. But that's not who the person really is. Thinking this way is an effort on my part to pull the targets of narcissistic abuse, some of whom are on a spectrum like me of codependency, out of this rigid and insistent naivety, to say, look, this person is not who they're claiming to be. This person is in defense of reality. You'd also do well to try and figure out what's the reality that they're so scared of. What is the reality that they're so scared of? They claim to be very kind and very loving and to only care about animals and the environment. In reality, they don't give a shit about anything but themselves, and they would hate for you and other people to uncover that. They claim to be some sort of academic superstar and a genius. The reality, they're plagiarists. They've never had an original thought in their lives. They take other people's work and ideas and pass it off as their own. They're actually quite boring. They're not exciting and scintillating. They're actually quite a dull and repetitive and shallow, empty vessel of other people's work. If they're trying to be very, very sexual, or they're trying to present themselves as very, very successful, or whatever it is, you'll see that there's fraudulence there. They're fraudulent human beings. It's a con. Why did she tell me she loved me and then have sex with me? Because it's a fraudulent human being and this is a con. And her perspective of life is to watch it from a third person, like she's watching a movie, to think about all things in terms of power and to convince you of the made up role, this dress up, this false self, this fantasy version of herself that she's role playing, or himself, whoever it happens to be. That's all I have to say about that. I did it in just under 10 minutes. So now I'll take your questions. You can ask me about anything at all. Damien asks, are you good, Bruds? Any good news? I'm going to go and see my sister in San Diego for Christmas. I'll be with my sister and my nephews for Christmas. That's good. Gym is going good. Life is good. Therapy's going well. Health is good. Yeah, life is good. Life is good. I'm going to do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu every day for the next 4 days this week. I'm looking forward to that. So, if you have any questions, just hit me with a couple of questions that end in a question mark, and I'll do my best to answer them. Queen of Wands asks, why do I not fall for the lies, but I stay? I don't know. If you're not falling for the lies, I don't know why you would stay if you're not being pulled into the web of deceit. Maybe you're lying to yourself. Maybe like, I'm not falling for this, and yet I stay, which would mean you are falling for it. I don't know. You've just described my next in 10 minutes. Yes, good. I'm learning to become more succinct and not ramble on. 4-year-old child is speaking of themselves in third person sometimes. Is that a bad sign? No. Children are supposed to be narcissistic. It's normal. That's a natural part of their ego formation. They're supposed to go through a narcissistic phase. And so a 4-year-old is figuring out that I am me and there are other people in the world. So a period of talking about themselves in third person is not necessarily a bad sign. Yes. Could we be projecting our exes onto people who actually aren't like them? Yeah, it's very common. And that's not just within narcissistic abuse. I'm not going to go off on modern dating on a big long rant about it, but I think that the way people are trying to get it done nowadays is just doomed to failure. And that's why relationships in the West are at a critical point. Birth rates are extremely low. And more people are reporting being single in their 30s than ever before. So there's no deep psychology to this. Doesn't need to be always deep psychology. What you'll get is a person who gets into a relationship. Let's say it goes for 6 months. They get massively disappointed. They're heartbroken. The person who breaks their heart isn't a narcissist. They're just selfish and thoughtless and irresponsible. And then that person on month 7 or month 8 is sat around at home on their own and they feel lonely. Now, what should they do? Yes, of course, they should go into therapy to process what just happened to them. But we live in the real world, and the overwhelming majority of people don't. They rush back into the next relationship as quickly as they can. I know people, I have very close friends who have not been single for more than 2 months since they were 17. And I'm not calling anybody out here, but I regret to inform you that if you're counting if you're in your late 40s and you've not been single for 2 months, for more than 2 months since you were 17, and you're counting your ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends above 6 or 7, the chance of you sanely being present in a relationship without dragging the ghost of your ex with you is zero. It's zero. That's just not. I'm not saying it's not a moral judgment. I'm not saying don't do it. People should do whatever they want. But if you're in pain all the time and your relationships suck, we should look for like simple explanations, and that could be one. My advice would be to everybody: if you get out of a relationship, don't rush into another one. Take some time off and be single. Go to therapy if you need to go to therapy. Why is narcissistic abuse so difficult to overcome? Do narcissists forget you? Do they always hoover years later? There's no reason to assume that they'll hoover years later. They might, but there's no rule that says always. Do they forget you? They never knew you to forget you. You were never remembered. You were an item. to be used. If it really is narcissistic personality disorder, they never knew you. They were never interested in you. They were interested in the version of you that they held inside of their solipsistic world. And then when you're replaced, I don't know, do they forget you? Well, we all forget people eventually. So yeah, and in some sense they forget you, but that's, everybody forgets everybody. They probably just do it a lot faster. Why is narcissistic abuse so difficult to overcome? The reason why it's so difficult to overcome is because it leaves you with part of your mind colonized in important ways that continues the narcissistic abuse even if you're not in contact with them. So it leaves you with a narcissistic shared fantasy, a simulated reality role-playing matrix that continues to run even after they've gone. And it leaves you with narcissistic introjects. So they're still talking to you. They're still operating inside of your mind. There's a course I'm going to release this week. I've tried to make it as fast and direct as possible in how to overcome these two elements. So there's got very little theory in the course. It's just like, okay, if you want to overcome the shared fantasy and the narcissistic introject, this is what you need to do. And it's going to be called Fast Track. So it's going to be called Fast Track. I'm endeavoring to edit it down to just the key points people need so they could just get on with their lives. Techniques for redefining and recognizing love. My fellow human, you must go to therapy. You must go to therapy. There's no, I don't know what happened to you that would lead to you asking this question, but you must try to get the help of another human being. Techniques, quick fix, read a manual, go to a seminar, buy a book. You're unsure of how to define love. You're unsure of how to recognize love. So that says to me, there must be an awful lot of separation from the self. And the only thing that creates so much separation from the authentic self is pain. So you've suffered a lot. You've probably just learned to deal with it and just pushed it down, but you should get some help with that. Are you ever going to go back to teaching self-defense? Yes. Not long now. In 2025, I will do, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Richard, that's me. What was the original course that you started? It was for free, but so important. It would have been about how to eye gouge and headbutt people, because that's how I started teaching online. I taught, it was called Street Fight Secrets, and it was about self-defense. But other free courses, I don't know, you'd have to give me a year. You'd have to try and define a year. I've been doing this since 2012. So that's 12 years. I've offered different free courses over the years. Narrow it down for me and I will help you if I can. Have you experienced a narcissist takeover or hijacking of your language, usually word for word? I have. There are other conditions where people do this. I believe that some people who are on the autism spectrum will mirror back language patterns and phrases. But I can also think of incidents where in my life I saw people who were either highly narcissistic or would have got the clinical diagnosis of NPD if they submitted to a test. Mirror me, yes, and sort of take modes of speech, patterns of thought, certain frames, and then feed them back to me and feed them back to other people. Yes, that happens. It for sure happens. Richard, what do you think about ketamine treatment? It seems that the published literature on it is encouraging for PTSD and depression. Let's see what happens. What do you think about one-night stands? Should they be avoided? Imagine I had a daughter. Now, you have introjected parts of me. You don't know me, but you know something about me. And imagine me. Let's say I'm 46. I have a 20-year-old daughter, and she comes home and she says, Dad, I just met a stranger last night and I had full penetrative sex with him 3 hours after I met him, and I'm never going to see him again. Do you think that I would just sit there and go, well, my child, light of my life, my precious daughter, that is just wonderful. I'm so happy you're letting people masturbate inside of your body, and that you also are instrumentalizing other humans to masturbate with their body as well. I'm not a Christian conservative. I'm not a mad right winger. But I do think at some point we're going to have to wake up from this bizarre malaise we've sank into around promiscuity. And now that I've said that, not in the live comments, but in the comments afterwards, you'll get like really, really angry responses to that. People like, I can do whatever I want with my body. Yes, you can. I would never stop you. Do you know why? Because I don't care. Because I don't have a daughter. Right here in the flat I'm in Hoylake by the beach, nobody here has one night stands, ever has, or ever will. And if you all want to do that to yourselves, go ahead. I think it's a terrible idea. But who cares what I think? You're spot on. And don't worry, things are changing. Schools teach 4-year-olds. Good. Yes. Thanks for all your work, Richard. It helped me a lot. Curious if you have more talks planned with Mark. I was talking to Mark today. Yeah, we'll do more stuff in the future for sure. Jesus, Stefan. Go. A stick for Allah. Go wash your mouth out. How many one night stands have you had, Richard? Zero. Z to the row. Sure. Sure, honey. Have another. It's funny. 456 people in this live, says Martha, and only 105 likes. She's laying down that social justice. Where is the justice in that? Hit that like button. It really supports the channel. Thank you, Martha. You're right. Some of your comments, some of you are fucking wild. I wish I could read this, but at the end of the day, it's still like I'm still vectoring of like mental health and CPTSD, and on this channel, I do have to be. Some of these comments are very funny though. Okay, is it normal to see? All right, let's get my game head back on. Is it normal to see narcissism in people, even old friends, since you've awakened to what you've experienced throughout your life? There is narcissism in people for sure. I wouldn't obsess over this stuff, and I wouldn't sit around diagnosing narcissism. I mean, off the top of your head, can you name without looking it up, the 9 diagnostic criteria for narcissism in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual? If you can't, what is it you think you're seeing in people? Are you seeing selfishness? Yeah, okay, but that's not narcissism. That's just selfishness. Do you want schools, interesting question, to teach at least high school level about narcissism? Yes, but I think there are other more important topics. I worked in the education system for 5 years, and I developed courses for high school age kids. And I wouldn't be like, if I had 5 hours to talk to a group of kids, I wouldn't be like, hello, here's 5 hours on narcissism. But it would be a part of what I would teach. Yes. It's not, it's important, but there are other, like, we need to talk about a moral philosophy. How do you have a life? How should a person live? What do you want your life to be about? What can you reasonably expect in your life? Do you understand that the things you do here at age 15 have a consequence at age 30, at age 45, at age 60? What do you fantasize your life is going to look like? What are you doing today to make sure that that happens? Which, oddly enough, the last time I spoke somebody out of being highly promiscuous, that was the logic that I used. I just said, what do you want your life to look like? And they told me, and I said, okay, if you continue doing what you're doing now, do you understand that's never going to happen? And they were like, oh, can't I have it all? And I was like, no. Jordan Peterson from Wish, you got to make sacrifice. Oh, it's too soon to get silly. You got to make sacrifices, bucko. Starred. These are starred questions. Let's get to them. What do you think? Why? What do you? What do you? What? What do you think? Why do narcs live in the past? Talk about achievement from 20 years ago all over again. It's a very dead, static, dark, two-dimensional mode of being in the world. So they don't like spontaneity. They don't like authenticity. They don't like vulnerability. Well, it's not that they don't like it. They can't do it. They can't do spontaneity. They can't do authenticity. They can't do what's real. Everything that happened in the past is their story of what happened in the past, and it's perfect because they've lied about it to themselves and to you and to other people. So my achievements in the past are effectively untouchable. They're perfect. I think when you get into a shared fantasy with a narcissist and you go down into the crypt with them and they open up the coffin, which is also like the pod in the Matrix, and say, climb into the coffin with me and dream with me. You dream in a dead space. You dream in a crypt, which is where dead people live. It's gone. It's what has been, not what is and what could be. Because what is and what could be is the enemy, because it's reality. Hope that made sense. Oslam just gave me money. You gave me £5. That'll go on a protein smoothie tomorrow. Thank you, Oslam. That's very kind of you. Why can a short relationship feel so bad? 1 month in love bombing heaven, then some breadcrumbs to be cruelly discarded and replaced right when I felt committed. Was she really a narcissist? I don't know how useful it is to make is the person a narcissist or not the primary metric by which we rate relationships and interactions. I would be asking questions because it can drive you crazy. I would be saying, did her actions match her words? How did I feel during the interaction? Did I feel safe? Did I feel comfortable? Or was it exciting, but also I felt on edge? Did the actions match the words? Did I feel like I was dealing with an authentic person? Is this a person? Did I find that she was very concerned with her image? If you were a woman, you were a man. Were they very concerned with his image? Did I see them being interpersonally exploitative? Did I see them being unnecessarily cruel to people that they were in a power position over? These are the questions I would rather you ask, because it's easier to say yes or no. Because narcissism, as I alluded to before, is this kind of mystery box that gets used as a bin. So unless you can name the 9 traits without looking them up from the DSM, when you say narcissism, what do you mean? Is she kind of an asshole? Maybe. Could she be kind of an asshole and just be selfish and vain and indifferent without having a psychiatric disorder? Yes. So you asked, is she really a narc? I mean, I don't know I don't know what happened to you. I don't know what happened in this situation. So I couldn't possibly say. But the metrics, try to use a simpler metric. Is this person truthful? Do they make me feel safe? Is there an awful lot of negativity here? Is there an awful lot of flim flam here and bullshit? So that would be the way I would approach that. Okay. Taken on their own, narcissistic traits can be part of a lack of maturity in adults. Does such a person outgrow narcissistic tendencies? What I can tell you from the literature is when we see somebody who ticks the boxes for borderline personality disorder, there does seem to be evidence that they can outgrow it through maturation. The thing is, if it's narcissistic personality disorder, the very nature of the personality disorder blocks them from maturation. So they're stuck. They stay stuck. But if you say that person's very aloof, they could just be immature. That person's got an arrogant demeanor, they could just be immature. That person is interpersonally exploitative, they could just be immature. That person's very obsessed with a false image of themselves, they could just be. So if you take it one by one, the traits, then yes, it could just be immaturity. If they're ringing the bells and it looks like clinical NPD, I don't think they're going to mature out of it. No. Stop asking about them. Start being about you. There's some interesting advice. UG Rose is here and is moderating. So thank you very much, UG. Please say thank you, UG. Lynchlight says Narcissus found another supplier that gives her luxury life, makes her looks like more successful than the victim she got rid of. How can we overcome this situation? Well, that sounds extremely painful. I don't think there's an overcoming as such. Something that really sucks has happened, and that's a kind of a moral injury. It's also a betrayal trauma. So then, what needs to happen is for the person who suffered this would need to go into a state of grieving and an acceptance that the person they thought they were with is not the person they turned out to be. It's very embarrassing. It's humiliating. Like, oh my God, I got conned. I should never have fallen for that. Then there'll be self-recrimination and guilt and so on. And you would process this in therapy, preferably with a qualified therapist would be the ideal situation so that you can move on and live your life. April has given me $4.99. That's very kind. Thank you, April. Being discarded and replaced right after the love bombing feels horrible. Yes. The way that it makes you feel is the way it's meant to make you feel. So you can assume after a narcissistically abusive relationship, if that's what you experience, that the way that you are feeling after it's broken down is the way that that person would most like you to feel. They'd like you to be devastated. Okay. Looking for questions. The easiest way for me to find questions is if you have like a question mark on them. Margot says, I just wanted a soulmate, not a psychology degree. Can we just, it's becoming a bit of a dating advice thing, this one. Generally speaking, people are not solutions. They're just people. And I'm not saying that you're saying that if you had a soulmate, that would be a solution to a question. But just check in with yourself. What do you mean when you're saying soulmate? What does that mean to you? Is that the final chapter? Is that eternal safety? Is that eternal bliss? Is it like we gotta you really gotta wrap your hands around this and be like, what do I mean when I say that? Because I see people fall into this trap a lot, and it's not really. Sometimes it's not about narcissism. It's about like being a little bit delusional about love. A person is just a person, and they have trauma, they have fear, they have phobias. Many people are running a dysregulated central nervous system. They may think you're wonderful, you may think they're wonderful. You're basically supplying each other with drugs in the first part of the relationship anyway. You might experience that as love bombing, not realizing that you're doing the same thing to the other person. It's all natural. It's all part of our evolutionary biology. It's our genes trying to replicate and pass on. And that's okay, but do it with your eyes open. Another human being is never going to solve all of your problems. Never. They're going to bring problems. They'll solve the companionship problem, and then they'll bring relationship problem. So having this blind faith or turning love into a religious impulse is extremely dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Never put a partner in a position where God or spirituality should be. Can you get diagnosed for multiple conditions at once, such as OCD and autism? Yes, these are called comorbidities. Yes, you can. Somebody sent me $10 and just gave it to me. Cass sent me $10. Thank you very much, Cass. That's very kind of you. Maybe you need a friend more than you need a partner. We're in an epidemic of loneliness, the researchers tell us. We need communities, we need people. We're evolved to be around people, we're evolved to be around a tribe. So if you got very, very, very lonely and very sick in your isolation, your fantasies of the perfect love that's going to bring you out of this hell of isolation might get stronger. Somebody comes along who's a little bit shaky and a little bit opportunistic, as most human beings are. You project all of your fantasies onto them. They don't fulfill the fantasy. Reality breaks through, and you might start to think, "Oh my God, they're a narcissist." When sometimes what's happened is we've brought pre-existing issues to a situation, rushed a relationship because we're so desperate to overcome our loneliness, and then it inevitably breaks down. Do you know what I mean? We've got to consider all of these things. How can I feel safe again after the narcissist has left, knowing he wants to come back? I don't understand that question, Debbie. I'm sorry. He wants to come back, and that stops you from feeling safe. You know, I think I should say this more often. All of this YouTube and Instagram and TikTok stuff, it's good for like a little bit of support and a bit of a giddy up. But like some of you really, really need to see counselors and therapists, because you need that contact, you need that dynamic with another human being who's qualified and understands the whole of your story. All I'm reading is just like little pixels, little glowing pixels. How could you possibly reduce your complex experience into a sentence? You can't. But I don't know what this means. I know what it could mean, but I don't want to project, so I can't really answer that. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Sylvia Ann says, how can we build community when we're using so many different labels like narcissism to create separation? If your use of the label narcissism is creating separation, then I suggest you just drop it. I'm not really convinced it's doing anybody a massive amount of good anyway. I do, but it usually comes around in like a 3 or 4 month cycle. I'm like, would it have been better if people just said, I was very disappointed by somebody who cheated on me and lied to me in a relationship. And we didn't have the seductive lure of complicated jargon. You've got to remember the human ego is strong and very slippery. Why do people want to say, my ex is a narcissist? For some people, maybe it makes them feel smart, or it sounds cleverer than saying, oh, my ex was a drunk, or my ex was a bum, or my ex is a cheat, or my ex is a liar. I don't know. But if the label is creating separation, then you're probably better off dropping it. I said this on a YouTube video a couple of weeks ago. In my personal life, my therapist don't believe me, by the way. I don't use the word narcissism inside my head. I'm not walking around going, narcissist, that's a narcissist, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist. I'll see patterns of behavior and I'll be like, oh, there's a person who's craving drama. Because I don't really care if people crave attention. The only people that the alarm bells go off for me is if I see a high conflict personality. I don't have anything to offer a high conflict personality. I don't want to be in conflict with you. But what if they're a drama queen, or they're really vain, or they just want attention? Would I entertain them? If they're not nasty and they're not high conflict, probably, yeah. Maybe it'd be funny. There's no evil intent with them. They're just kind of like attention seeking, or a bit vain, or a bit silly, or a bit, to me, it doesn't really bother me. But if the labels that we're attached to are creating separation, then maybe it's time to get rid of the labels. But every adult who's watching this needs to make that decision for themselves. It's very important to create communities and to be a part of a community. Okay, just looking for questions here, really. Is it good to detox on people? Maybe for a short period of time, but you need humans. And if you stay isolated for too long, you're going to get sick. The psychology community obviously needs labels so that they can communicate with each other. But it is stupid. Oh, that's very judgmental language, James. Come on now. Ill-advised. It is stupid when people are throwing the word around on social media. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we just need to be careful with this stuff, I think. We just need to be careful. Narcissist does get bandied around like an insult. Well, the problem is it's become a slur. And so once it's reduced to a slur, so say if you have people, the majority of the word usage is by academics who know what the 9 traits for narcissistic personality disorder are. You're in one situation, but what if it got imbalanced to the point where the overwhelming majority, not 90-10, but 99% and 1%, are using the term just as an insult with no idea what it means? You say to people, my ex is a narcissist. What does that mean? They were just really dickish and mean. Okay, what was it that made them a narcissist specifically? Do you mean they had narcissistic personality disorder? I've had conversations like that with people. I'm not making this up, at seminars, and I'll say, do you think that means they had narcissistic personality disorder? And they'll look at me and they'll go, what's that? And I'm stood there and I'm going, okay, so you're using the word narcissist in a semi-clinical way, but you're not aware that it points to a clinical entity called NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. So then what does that mean? What does it then mean? If it's got to, so my question with like the thing before of doing this with my hands, what gives vocabulary validity? Is it the number of people using it? If it's by numbers of people using it, narcissism is now meaningless because it is just a slur. Can it be clawed back? Probably, but it would take some work now because there are people who vector in for a model of personality disorder called narcissistic personality disorder, and there are actual victims of narcissistic abuse. But you've got so many people, do you know what I'm saying? Like self-selecting. I was the victim of a narcissist, and you're like, well, maybe. I mean, this is YouTube. It's a terrible way to. Well, it's just not possible to know via YouTube what's really going on. Sometimes I think the advice is helpful, and it helps people to move on. And I realize I'm reaching people who have actually experienced narcissistic abuse. And then other times I worry. I'm like, I think I'm just popularizing the overuse of a term. But yes, it is now a slur, and that is a problem. When I pressed the divorce button after my ex said she wanted to end our marriage, she unleashed unholy hell for a year. Will she ever stop abusing me? Will her wrath stop? I don't know your ex, Rachel, so I don't, how could I possibly say? It's not possible for me to say, mate. I don't know your ex. I don't know what her issues are. If it is narcissistic personality disorder, then they can take personal affront and run with that for a very, very long time. That's for sure. Beep 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 beep. Boop boop boop. Okay, let's do a couple more questions. Ask me about anything. You can ask about anything at all now. We've got 5 minutes left. You don't have to ask me just about narcissism. UG Rose says, please keep hitting the like button. Thank you, UG. Thank you for moderating. I appreciate it. Nada says, we... Oop. 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 Oh. When does the fun start? I've been asking myself that question for 46 years over here. When's the fun gonna start? Maybe it's happening without me. I lost somebody's. Nada, I lost your comment. Sorry. Oh, there it is. We need both the clinical perspective as well as personal experience. It's coming together. Most individuals use it as a slur, also unaware, and emotional people who use the term irresponsibly. True. I have been sent P999 by Lynchlight. What? Lynchlight, what dinero? What dinero? Que tipo de dinero es eso? P999. I don't know what that is, but thank you. I'm very grateful for receiving 999 P's. Pesos? What is it? I don't know what that is, man. But thank you. I appreciate it. Do you recommend martial arts? Yes. Or any other non-psychology thing for recovery? Do martial arts. Go learn how to box. Don't spar. You'll get brain damage like I did. Go learn how to do Muay Thai. Go move your body around and then dance. I like bachata. I have 3 bachata events this week. I'm very happy about that. So dance, do martial arts, move your body, do yoga, do something physical. You should do something with your body. I like lifting weights as well. You don't have to do that, but you should get your blood oxygenated regularly. So yeah, that's also a big part of recovery. Get a good sweat on doing something a couple of times a week. Can a brain scan be court ordered by the courts? Is there a chance? There's no brain scan for narcissistic personality disorder. What diagnosis should a blunt, friendless, and argumentative person seek? I don't know. You'd have to speak to a clinical psychologist. Possibly a blunt, friendless, and argumentative. There is a not very well known personality disorder that they say is sometimes mistaken for MPD, and nobody talks about it. It's called OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. It's strange. Well, it's a little distracting that it's called obsessive compulsive personality disorder because it doesn't have much to do with obsessive compulsive disorder. But if you're interested, you go look it up on the Wikipedia page, spend 2 minutes reading about it. So possibly that one. It reveals brain function though. So I see where you're coming from, uh, but we can't give people brain scans and then diagnose personality disorders from the brain scans. It just doesn't work like that. It's a very interesting topic. I love talking about it. It's probably a bit heavy for here, and we don't have much time. But essentially, it just doesn't work like that. You couldn't look at somebody's brain scan and say, "Oh, this person has, you know, dependent personality disorder." It doesn't work like that. I've been using martial arts for exercising and meditation, my healing working real good. Excellent. I'm very, very glad to hear that. Meditation is only ever a good thing. Let us sit now in meditation. Let us focus on our breathing and on being in the present moment. With physical stillness, mental stillness can flourish. And with physical and mental stillness, we can create space between our thoughts. And we can embrace a few moments of silence where there's no stimuli hitting us in our poor, overworked brains. Long, slow breath in. Enjoy the moment and slowly let it out. Oh. Sometimes it's good to just be. Stillness, silence, spaciousness. Well, that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. Hope that was useful. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Cheers.